Back in time, there lived a grumpy king, a grumpy king who wore a huge crown that weighed heavily on his neck and shoulders. And so all day long, it was uncomfortable. But there was another reason he was grumpy, for he had a secret. This king had donkey ears. Now, not just pointy ears that could be described as donkey ears, but huge donkey ears. And the large crown was to cover them up. Now, when he was young, his mother wrapped his head in a turban, and no one noticed his donkey ears. But now, as king, he had to walk around with his heavy crown all day long. And the only person who knew about his donkey ears was his faithful servant. For when he retired to his chambers and took the crown off with great relief and placed it on the table and sat back in his chairs, and his servant knew that if he ever told the secret, he would pay with his head. But as the king grew into his late 20s, his advisers said that he should marry. For a king must have a queen, and a king and queen must have princes and princesses and heirs, and there was no choice in the matter. Now, there wasn't a huge queue to become his queen, for everyone in the neighbouring countries had heard how grumpy he was. Not unjust, not unfair, but just grumpy. But there was a princess of his own age who was intrigued by his grumpiness and wondered why this should be, and if perhaps she became his queen, she might be able to cheer him up. So the wedding was set, and the occasion was to be a great feast and entertainment. There would be jugglers and dancers, singers and storytellers and musicians, and the whole company would be entertained as the king sat on his throne with his new queen next to him. And as the time approached, musicians and jugglers and storytellers and singers appeared from all corners of the country and beyond to audition for this great occasion. And there came a piper who had walked for 3 days. For he knew if he was to perform at the king's wedding, this would make his name not only in this country but the surrounding countries as well. But having walked for 3 days, he arrived just as the sun was setting. The guards had changed. There was no one in sight to show him where to go. He came through the gates of the city and into the inner castle, and he walked up a winding stone staircase. And there in front of him was a huge oak door. And when he opened it, there was the king sitting in a chair with his crown on the table next to him, sitting in a chair with his donkey ears in full view. The king's face turned crimson with rage, and the piper bowed low and told the king why he'd come in spluttering, nervous talk. "I've come to play at your wedding." "This," he said, pointing to his ears, the king, "is a grave secret. If you pass it on, you will pay with your head. The piper walked out backwards, clutching his pipes, closed door, heart beating, breathless with fear. He left the city and went up a hill and sat and practiced his pipes under a willow tree. And as he practiced, he thought of his secret, and we all know we do not like to harbour a secret. Eventually, he dug a hole by the tree's roots, cupped his hands and said into the hole, "The king has donkey ears." He covered it over. Now, as he was practicing, the reed in his pipe broke, and he unscrewed it and took it out, tossed it aside, found his knife and took a piece of willow, shaved it off just right, and placed it back of another perfect reed, and began to practice again. The next day, the wedding ceremony took place in great pomp. The couple moved into the great hall where tables were set, and all the gentry from the Queen's country and the King's company were spread along the table. And at the end of the feast, the entertainment began. The jugglers played, the magicians wowed them with their tricks, the singers sang, and finally the piper came forward. And he began to play, and a hush fell on the company as they listened. But it didn't play the tune that his fingers told it to. It played a song. In fact, it sang. The king has got donkey ears, donkey ears, donkey ears. The king has got donkey ears. The company, wide-eyed, stared at the king and his huge crown. And the pipes continued to sing. The king has got donkey ears, donkey ears, donkey ears. The king has got donkey ears. No one laughed. There was a silence as they waited for the king to erupt in a fury. He was red-faced and teeth gritted. But the queen turned to her new husband and said, "Donkey ears, can I see?" Flushed with shame, the king could do nothing else but lift his crown off his head and place it on the table next to his throne. And there for all to see were his donkey ears. No one dare even gasp as they looked on the sight. But the queen sat back in her throne and said, "Oh, donkey ears, very regal, fit for a king, I suspect." The shame drained away from the king in a moment, and the burden he had carried all his life fell away as he smiled at his new queen. And the people clapped and cheered with relief. And from then on, the king could wear a small, manageable crown while his ears poked up either side. And the people in his country thought it was regal that their king should have those famous ears. And when they met people from other countries and spoke of their monarchs, they said, your king, and what kind of ears does he have?" And the people would say, "Normal ears, like yours or mine." And they would say, "Ah, but our king has donkey ears, and we are proud of it."